Yes, this is DJ Ski.
I'm Jeff Wilson.
Hey guys, Andy Broom, Vice President of CGC Cards.
Hey, this is Jason Howarth with Panini.
Yo, I'm Q Harrison.
Hey gang, this is Tom Verrilli. I'm the Chief Product Officer at Whatnot.
This is Teapot from Sports Card Investor.
This is Adam Rips with VFriends.
What's up? This is Aaron from Slab Stocks.
Hey, this is Clark from 5 Card Guys and the Cards to the Moon podcast.
Hey guys, this is Jay with Wild Card.
What's up everyone? This is Duke Dodson from Graybos.
What's up everybody? This is Chris Kelsey from Nash Cards.
What's up everyone? This is Mark Hill from My Card Post.
This is Ray Schulte.
This is Chase Krim.
This is Cody from Texas Roadshow Shop.
This is Mark Aaron from WSB Radio in Atlanta, and you're listening to the Sports Card Strategy Show.
I'm loving the content.
Loving the content here.
I'm loving the content here on the Sports Card Strategy Show.
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 And I'm telling you, the Sports Card Strategy Show.
This is the Sports Card Strategy Show with your man, Paul Hickey. What's good?
Be sure to subscribe for year-round advice on keeping your portfolio up to date.
Part of the NoOffSeason.com Sports Card Network, the #1 place for advice on how to make money flipping sports cards. Thanks for tuning in, and remember, there is no off-season.
There is no off-season.
There is no off-season.
And there's no off-season.
You already know, there is no off-season.
No off-season!
All right, you ready to rock?
Ready to go.
When you get into this game, the reason why you pay someone like Paul Hickey to get your sports card strategy together is because sometimes when you're starting out, you need perspective, you need wisdom, you need insights. And so he's been around the track enough times where he can actually coach you up and guide you. Doesn't mean he's going to take you to the promised land tomorrow, but you now have a coach by your side that can advise and kind of even create these pathways where you can get the education yourself. And that's a lot better than thugging it out on your own. Thugging it out on your own.
What? The kids better buy my rookie card now. Cause after this year, the price ain't coming down.
Welcome in, everybody. I'm your host, Paul Hickey. It's time to sit back, listen, learn, and earn with me on the Sports Card Strategy Show. Kendall the Lefty McKee, I have a question for you and the audience. Any guesses on what that might be?
How are you?
Are you ready to start grading your cards? CGC Cards is the perfect place to slab your favorite sports cards from their crystal clear holders to their affordable pricing. CGC Cards is the perfect stop for your grading needs. Go to cgccards.com to start grading today. How are you?
I'm good, other than what am I to do with a Jared Goff card now? What is going on?
Let's actually talk about that because our NFL selling cheat sheet is updated. So go check that out. Premium members at nooffseason.com. Commanders beat the Lions. Chiefs beat the Texans. Bills pulled it out against the Ravens, and the Eagles pulled it out against the Rams. So NFL divisional round is over. We have 4 teams left. We talk about selling once these top quarterbacks make it to the Super Bowl. More on that in the cheat sheet. But Lefty, what are you doing with Goff? Let's break that down, actually. That's a great first thing to talk about here.
So we've documented how this is like the last card of my July purchases, and it's been all gravy since then. You know, like I've gotten good money back on everything. And I believe I'm still going to be able to have enough profit off of this Jared Goff where it's still a good purchase back in July. But it didn't go like I wanted it to go. You know, I even said a couple weeks ago, like, I'm kind of risking it. Hopefully they win their first playoff game, you know, because I wanted to list it right after they were supposedly supposed to win last night. I know that's emotional for you as well as a Lions fan. Tough, man, just tough. And so I saw it kind of going that way during the game. Like I was like, this isn't their day. You know, like they may squeak it out, but this isn't their day. And it's definitely not going to rise his stock in terms of the price of this card. So I actually it's been on buy it now on eBay. So I had it for like 800-ish. And so I offered before the game started 700 something for, and I said in the comments, I was like, the pre-game purchase, you know, like, and so nobody bid on that. So as soon as I saw it was kind of going awry, it was in the first quarter. I listed that sucker on auction in the first quarter, and there were only 7 views of the card the entire game. And it was just like, one, I think this is a hard parallel to sell because it doesn't look like it's supposed to be an out of 75 auto. So there's like, I don't like, for instance, I have some Arch Manning autos up right now that are getting hundreds of views. And I have a Jared Goff card that has 9 views out of 75, so it's like that's just some perspective, and it's also in a BGS slab. There's some things that are what you would call not the right card, I guess, if that makes sense. But I do have it up on auction. It has officially been bid on. It's up to about $150 to $200. I bought it for $300, so I should be okay.
Yeah. Okay. So that's a brilliant move. I think everybody should go back and rewind their podcast apps to listen to what Lefty, like the intricacies of what Lefty said there, when he's getting the feeling that the team could lose and it could go the wrong way, he switches it to an auction. I think because also from my perspective, the research I've done, I've noticed that when quarterbacks, we'll say top quarterbacks, Jared Goff is obviously not like the superstar level of a Mahomes or a Josh Allen or even a Jaden Daniels at this point, unfortunately, but he has been leading the Lions to really, really nice seasons this is like basically the 3rd straight season.
Yeah.
And so now, he's in the upper echelon of playoff quarterbacks, anticipated playoff quarterbacks. And so typically, even like say with a Jalen Hurts, with we'll say like a Justin Herbert maybe getting bounced out early, Joe Burrow in the past getting bounced out early, you see their card value really stay okay for maybe 5 to 7 days after the loss, and then it starts to go down. So like when they make it this far. So when they make it this far, basically Lefty did here is he said, okay, look, I've probably got another 7-day window max before it just maybe crashes and burns. And so let me just flip this to an auction. Lefty, that was basically, you knew you were going to do that the whole way, right?
Yes. Yeah. And I was just, so we always talk about, or I'm really big on crystallizing the asset when it's like 80 to 90% of the potential value that it could have at its peak. And this was the one time I held a card longer than that. And it's seemingly, I wouldn't say burning me. That's not the language I'll use, but it's not going the way I wanted it to go. Mm-hmm. Therefore, it gives me more fuel in the 80 to 90% fire, like selling on the way up type thing that we've talked about. Like, for instance, listing in mid-March rather than April for baseball cards and things like this, like I think it's just further supplanting in me the desire to get out before the very last moment and cut maybe the 10% off, but knowing that you have a guaranteed win and a guaranteed sale.
That's a great point. And one other thing I want to say to it is that like we've talked on this show and like probably more so at nooffseason.com and Sports Card School about how to diversify your portfolio. And I know that you've diversified in a way that like sets you up where this was a riskier hold. So we're kind of like, we're diversifying our sports card investment portfolios to where we have like a certain percentage where we know when we're going to sell it regardless. Like there's just, and sometimes it's like right when we get it back from grading. Sometimes it's during the hype rise of a season. You've talked about Cooper Flagg cards, maybe holding them until March Madness, but then, then he has this 42 point game. Maybe you sell it then, right? You need to be able to adjust. So there's that type of allocation to your portfolio. And then you've got this allocation where it's like, I'm going to hold it to see if this guy makes it to the Super Bowl. If he doesn't, I'm okay because it's only X amount of my portfolio. If he does, I'm winning even bigger. And that's why you're only allocating X amount of your portfolio to it. So I think I'm glad. Thanks for walking us through your Jared Goff selling strategy there. I think that's very, very valuable to the audience.
Now what I am excited about is freaking Jaden Daniels going into like the next round. I have 50 of his cards in assembly right now. And which ones are they? They got to be a Tops Now. Yeah, they're the one that we got the autograph in the
Hail Mary.
Hail Mary, yeah. So they're the Hail Mary one, which is the one that we wanted, and I've got 50 of them and they're in assembly. So if those pop this week, I'm going to be a happy guy, because that's going to go straight to the vault and straight to eBay.
They should pop when they're in assembly. I mean, my experience is that they pop in
the next couple of days,
shortly thereafter. Yeah, exactly. That's great timing, and I think a lot of our audience probably in a similar situation. I know a lot of our audience bought a lot of the Tops Now plays. We've been telling them, finish the play, and so timing has worked out well. Unfortunately, for Lions fans like myself, timing has worked out well for the audience members who have held the Jaden Daniels cards till now. I think now is a great time to be auctioning those off. And I know probably there's some crossover there. There's some Lions fans who listen to the podcast who also are benefiting from the Jaden Daniels plays. So that's good. And I still have a few auctions ending for Jaden Daniels, although I've already sold most of them over the last 7 to 10 days. So I'll probably miss out on some of the upside, but I'm still winning on the Jaden Daniels plays. But hopefully your grades pop and we get you selling them. One thing I know, one of our members that grades with us, we were waiting on his cards to get to me from PSA, his Jaden Daniels cards, and he had 15 or 20 of them. And he emailed me, and I don't typically do this, by the way, people who grade with me, but I made an exception because this particular gentleman emailed me and was like, and they're Panini Instant Jaden Daniels cards. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to get him, while I'm waiting for the package to get to me, I'm going to get him the photos. So I emailed him the photos, and I said, list them. They'll get to me, then they'll get to you, and it'll be within the 7 days. And then we know that you can go ahead and get these auctions going. So hopefully he did. And there's a lot of different moves you can make there with the timing, but obviously be careful when you don't have the cards. But when you know you're going to have the cards and you've got the photos, I think it's okay. I think it's because you got the tracking number, right? If you don't have the tracking number yet, that's when I think it gets a little dangerous.
So I just looked at PSA and to see if they had moved from assembly to whatever today. And they have moved. So assembly with a clock is it's determining. This now has assembly with a check mark on it. Plus all of my things say listing pending on eBay. So they've got to be coming soon, brother. So this could be a great win for me. Sure, the Jared Goff mountaintop didn't work out, but maybe the Jaden Daniels mountaintop worked out.
Diversification of the portfolio. You had the Jaden Daniels submitted a few months ago. You bought them a few months ago, submitted them a few months ago. Now they're ready to come out of the oven, be delivered hot and fresh to Lefty McKee, ready to be delivered directly probably to you're probably not even going to ship them to yourself. You're just going to list them on the PSA vault.
They already are going to eBay. They don't even go into the vault first. They're just
that's right, directly to eBay. Thank you for that clarification, because there is a difference. They're going directly to eBay. Okay, let's say hello to the live chat because it's on and popping, and then we're going to get into more just brief wrap up of the NFL weekend. Terry Anderson in the house. Bo Belcher, Tom DiCaprio, the authentic sports card dad, Andrew McDade, Tyler Berwick, Mo Fa Joe, Ryan Painter, George Schurer, and many more on Instagram. Those are the YouTube live chatters. So shout out to everybody over on IG. Get your ass over to youtube.com/Paul Hickey. It's better. But anyway, we're streaming on Instagram right now anyway. Just to let you guys know that we're here. Now,
is Jake the Guardian watching? Because I'm going to say something that he's going to want to see later. That's all I'm saying.
He probably is. Tyler Berwick, though, did have a question about Jordan Love, and I love Mofa Joe's answer. He says, we have him in the formula. You should definitely take a look. Go to nooffseason.com. Okay. And then the authentic sports card dad says, what about the current Tops Now Jaden Daniels? I would highly encourage, first of all, all questions, go to nooffseason.com/ask, because that is always going to be the best way where we can answer your questions. But what I've been telling our premium members who have asked about the Topps Now Jaden Daniels really for the last several weeks, maybe even a couple of months now, is fade, 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 fade. Why, Lefty? Explain why.
Because there's so many of them. I mean, this is number 23 of his Topps Now cards.
Yeah, there's so many of them. And Lefty's 100% right. There's so many the market is already flooded with raw Topps Now Jaden Daniels cards. The only reason why we're making money is because we have these PSA graded Jaden Daniels cards. So if you look at, also, Jaden Daniels has a bunch of Donruss cards out. Also, he has like Prestige. Also, he has all these other crappy Panini releases. Also, he has Prizm, which we're going to talk about later in today's show. What will the first Jaden Daniels Prizm Silver PSA 10 sell for? So stay tuned for that. Now, Lefty, what everybody needs to understand out there is when they need to understand supply and demand. So there's already a ridiculous supply of raw Topps Now and Panini Instant Jaden Daniels cards. The only thing that differentiates them are the PSA graded, especially in the Gem Mint 10. Now you also have a bunch of raw Donruss, a bunch of raw Prizm, etc. Like I just said. What you don't necessarily have yet is you don't necessarily have the supply of the PSA 10s in the Donruss and the Prizm, which are the better sets. So that's the reason why we have to be selling the Topps Now and Panini Instant Jaden Daniels PSA 10s right now. We have to be selling them. And that's also the reason, obviously, why not to go buy more of. It's almost like it's really, really close. If you're going to go buy, I would equate it to, for somebody who says, should I go buy a Topps Now Jaden Daniels card from like Beating the Lions or whatever? That's kind of like buying his second year card at this point.
Yeah.
It's like pretty close to that, right? Pro Football, Mofa Joe put together some data. 2018 Lamar Jackson Concourse Silver Raw is up 170%. 2017 Optic Patrick Mahomes Base is up 85%. 2018 Saquon Barkley Pink Optic is up 253%. Here's an interesting one. 2016 Optic Jared Goff Raw up 100%. That might not sell the same way after Saturday nights because I think these stats came in before then. 2016 Prizm Derrick Henry Rookie Intro SGC 10 up 150%. 2023 Prizm CJ Stroud Prizm Break Green up 1,112%. And Jaden Daniels is up across the board. Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen, Matt Stafford have not had any notable sales. That's interesting. So go check out the NFL selling cheat sheet at nooffseason.com. That'll help you kind of determine real quick based on what you have, what we think you should do. Shout out to Jake, the Guardians fan, like Lefty mentioned already. What's up, Jake? He is in the lab constantly for nooffseason.com, working on the sports card rankings updates. So we do have some top risers and fallers in the already graded rankings. And again, we had a listener earlier, Tyler Berwick, ask about Jordan Love. So Jordan Love's 2020 Select 247 club level red die cut PSA 10. If you can get it for a target, the target cost is based on average comps in the last 30 days, $36. This card, you can make 56% on it. And what's interesting is it's an ROI change of 65%. So a couple of weeks ago, you weren't going to make any money if you would have bought it based on the target cost. Now, if you can go get it for the target cost, you can make 56%. So that's up quite a bit. A few more. Dak Prescott, 2016 Optic Hollow PSA 10 is up 48%. So you can make 46% ROI on it. Again, couldn't have made any money if you would have bought it, say, a month ago. Now it's down enough. Target cost $82 where you can make money on it. Brock Purdy, 2022 Prizm Base 353 PSA 10. ROI change in the positive direction of 35%. you can make 6% on it if you buy it at $53. Darius Garland, a longtime favorite of mine, who I've kind of soured on. Jake is actually from this area, the Cleveland, Ohio area. So I wonder if Jake was paying special attention to DG. But you can make 6% on DG's 2019 Prizm Silver 288 PSA 10. We've actually always really liked that card. Target cost $64. It's up 30% in terms of ROI change. And then the final one, Ja Morant 2019 Chronicles, Panini Chronicles 116 PSA 10. Target cost $195. We think you can make 3% on it based on our mathematical formula at nooffseason.com, up 29%. So there's a lot packed into that. It's kind of like if you know, right? Like we know a lot of you are maybe new to the show and don't understand what any of that means. But if you go to nooffseason.com, get a free 30-day trial, look at our sports card rankings. I would say it's the most sophisticated mathematical formula that exists that actually simplifies the process. It's like a cheat sheet for you can go to a bunch of other data tools. You can go to Market Movers. You can go to 130 Point. They're great data tools just simply for looking at what has a card most recently sold for. Well, our tool, the formula-based sports card rankings, tells you what a card is projected to sell for in the future based on the math, and gives you the target cost and the percentage of ROI that you would make if you can buy it for the target cost. So if you don't really love grading cards, or you want to diversify your portfolio where you have some that you don't have to grade yourself, you can buy already graded. Rewind the podcast app. Wherever you're watching, wherever you're listening, hit rewind a few times, listen to what I just said. Go try to look for those cards at the target cost. But there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds more at nooffseason.com. So we're only giving away a few free here on the Sports Card Strategy Show. Lefty, let's talk about your guy, Cooper Flagg.
I love Cooper Flagg.
He, transitioning to hobby news real quick, he inked an NIL deal with Fanatics. So Cooper Flagg is Fanatics exclusive as of now. Autograph signing, everything. Talk about it.
I just want to know if he's going to be at Fanatics Fest, because if I'm coming with you, I want to meet him there. That's all I'm saying. A big Cooper Flagg fan. I'm not sure. When we were texting about this in mine and Turner and yours group chat, I posted this in this group chat, and I said, I don't know how much this really changes things, because most of his cards are Topps cards anyway, with some of the licensing and things, but it is an official stamp for Cooper Flagg is a big freaking deal. How many players are Fanatics signing right now to massive NIL deals? Only the best. So this is another stamp of approval of saying this guy's passed the first couple of months of people looking at him saying, is he worth the hype? Is he worth the play? Is he worth one of the top 5 selections for Paul Hickey of which cards he's going to buy in 2025? And so I think more than just the cards that'll come out with this deal, and more than the actual exclusives for Fanatics. Of course, we won't have any Panini instants necessarily. At least not with autographs on them and things. More than that, I think this is just a further supplanting of how big this guy's market will be. And these Cooper Flagg's cards are not going to be cards that you have to say. You're never going to hear someone say at least in the next 6 months, oh, Cooper Flagg's underrated or undervalued. You're not going to say how many times have you heard that about guys like Jalen Hurts or guys like Yordan Alvarez, where it's just oh, this card is undervalued. You never have to say that about Cooper Flagg, because it's going to be the card to have, and he's going to be the player in 2026 NBA season, 2025, 2026 NBA season. And that starts now. Yeah, and a couple of other takeaways for me. He will be
in 2025 Bowman University Chrome basketball which will be huge. And I think now you can obviously expect a ton of different hits with autos, and I would not be surprised to see Fanatics and Topps blow out this release with some cool inscriptions, like inscription autos, like they did with LeBron and Bronny, and before that Victor Wembanyama. So I think this is he's like Wemby number 2. He's Wemby. He's Wemby Jr. I mean, he's right there with Wemby as like the next big deal, and he's already obviously a huge deal. He's proven on the court already in a short period of time that he is worth the hype. And even before that, and the reason I think we knew that was going to happen is because of how he played against the U.S. men's national team as part of the junior team. There were articles where the pros on the Olympic team were basically giving him a ton of props and saying he's the real deal. And when that, the last time I remember that happening was Wemby. The time before that was LeBron. So I'm pretty sold on Cooper Flagg like you are. So I think the 2025 Bowman U Chrome basketball is going to be massive. I think also what this probably means, based on what's happened in the past in these types of situations, is while we've already seen Topps Now cards for Cooper Flagg, and we've already started to give people the warning of pumping the brakes a little bit on those because he's already had 3 out. Once he has more than 5 out, it's like we need to just be moving away from the Topps Now stuff if it's just the base stuff. But what this really means is we probably won't see any Panini Cooper Flagg cards until he's in the NBA. And then he has to go to the rookie premiere, and the rookie premiere has to be in a situation where Panini still has the licensing. And now we're getting into the 2025-2026 season where he'd be in the NBA, which I don't know. And I don't know. I think lawyers might still be trying to figure out if Panini has any rights to any licensing for that season. So there's probably information out there that you could find that might say Fanatics takes over in 2026. I don't think we really know exactly what that means yet. But I'm excited to see obviously what it means. Another thing which I don't think is really a big deal is Caleb Downs, the outstanding safety at Ohio State, has signed an exclusive agreement with Panini. It's just like, okay, that's whatever. I don't think anyone in the Sports Card Strategy Show audience or at nooffseason.com should ever buy a Caleb Downs card. Sorry, unless you're an Ohio State fan and you want to keep it for your PC. That just makes no sense. So Lefty, I'll let you go back around in the show notes if there's anything else you see you want to talk about. But I know there's some people in the live chat talking about this Roki Sasaki situation where he is now a Dodger. So I'll let you kind of lead the discussion on that.
Yeah, I think this is what we all expected. Some of us, what we hoped would not happen. Some of us hoped that this would happen. The behemoth of the Dodgers have deferred $1 gazillion to 20 forever, and they're going to have this super team. And there's a lot of people out there that are arguing, is this good and bad for baseball? Blah, blah, blah. That's not what we're here to debate today. What we are talking about is Roki Sasaki is now officially in an MLB roster. So what does that mean for us? That means we are to offload every Roki card that we have been accruing since we started talking about him during the baseball World Cup, the FIBA World Cup. No, FIBA's basketball. You know what I'm trying to say? When Japan and America faced each other in Marlins Stadium, where Shohei struck out Trout to end the game, that series is when Roki came alive. And he's been in the MPB. He comes back over here early, actually. He decided to come over before he was technically eligible, and his team said, you know what, you're so valuable. We're going to make you're our cash cow. We're going to make some money. So just sell everything you have of Roki right now. Everything that I have acquired over the last year, I have on auction right now. Please, everyone, this is an exciting time, but sell everything right now of Roki. This is the exact same statement I made about Yamamoto 1 year ago. And there was a bunch of people out there that listened to our show that decided to not sell Yamamoto when we said get out of absolutely everything. And then they held too long. And they were buying the tops nows and things like that. I would advise not to do that because his market is at its peak right now. You need to be getting out when people are trying to get in. Don't fall into the temptation of getting in unless you're a PCer, which that's not really what we're talking about here.
Yeah. I'm so glad you said all that so that I didn't have to say it. And that should answer a lot of questions in the live chat. What do you think this does to Shohei's?
But
what do you
get
think
out
this
of him.
does to Shohei's value?
So we briefly mentioned this as a potential likelihood. I think maybe the December 30th show when we talked about unveiling year 5. And I alluded to, I think you wanted to get into Shohei before the Roki Sasaki news it potentially happens, because I knew that this could be a 3-headed Japanese monster going into the next season. You got you've got Shohei, Yoma, and then you've also got Sasaki. And then I know, like, who cares about Blake Snell and Tyler Glasnow, who, by the way, are both phenomenal. This is the best starting 5 we've ever seen. So I think they will get an insane amount of publicity this year with the Dodgers. And I think this actually vaults Shohei's market, in my opinion, in 2 ways. Shohei can afford to not be the dominant pitcher that he has been previously, and the Dodgers will still ball out. If he was not a dominant pitcher with the Angels didn't win. That's not the thing for the Dodgers. So I think Shohei will have a little more leeway if he doesn't come out and just starts blowing people away after his second Tommy John surgery, which statistically with other pitchers, that has been the case. It's taken them time to warm back up. I think that's good for him. I also think there's a lot of media attention that will be driven his way because there's a lot of eyeballs going his way. Therefore, I would expect his value to go up, which would be a good time for you to potentially get out of some of the things that you have already gotten into, even though it's only 1 month into the year. I don't know. How do you receive that?
I receive it as, like, I think that if you bought Shohei a couple of months ago, say after the World Series hype came down a little bit, and the card that you bought is now, I think I receive it as that you should watch the card that you bought, watch the Shohei cards that you own. And if you're up on them significantly based on this Roki news over the next week, then if you're up significantly, look at maybe selling. But Shohei is also Shohei. So if you're not up significantly, or even if you are and you don't want to sell, you could still be okay, right? It's like everybody, there's so many options with Shohei, and that's why I wanted to pick him as one of my 5. I was able to get in to him on some raw cards from our formula sports card rankings on the raw to grade side right before the Roki news dropped. I was able to pick up like 8 to 10 of his top cards from the formula raw to grade. Now they're from 2018, so it's a little bit of a risk, but I did my research. I went through the process we talk about at nooffseason.com. Go check that out. Get a free 30-day trial if you haven't already. There's a lot of people asking a lot of questions on Instagram Live and on youtube.com/Paul Hickey. One of them, Kittle_Charles. I want to address this. He asked a question about PSA grading being real strict about the semi-rigid. We go through that in depth at Sports Card School and on the premium pod. Kittle_Charles. Everyone but you, Kittle, is there. So you need to go there. Go to nooffseason.com/ask. Get a free 30-day trial. Ask the question there. You'll find a lot of great resources. We love you. Thank you for tuning into the show. Let's keep it to baseball real quick. Again, thanks to Mofa Joe's research here and show notes. Vlad Guerrero Jr., I believe, was a player that you and Interner talked about on Lefty Cards. I want to say late summer. And you were looking at him as a potential buy. We talked a little bit about it on the Sports Card Strategy Show. Now he's in these trade rumors. Mets, Padres, Red Sox. What's going on with Vlad, Lefty? And, is this a potential huge selling marker for this guy?
Yeah, I believe it was a little bit earlier than late summer because we were targeting maybe Vlad getting moved last summer because of the writing on the wall of the potential young crop that the Blue Jays have had over the last 5 to 6 years that people are saying, oh, when this team develops, and then none of them have really clicked together. So I was like, okay, I think we could see the Blue Jays looking at this situation saying, let's get out of what we have and potentially push the ball further down, kind of a trusting the process type look. That didn't exactly happen, but Vladdy's that didn't happen, but Vladdy's market went bananas in September because he was exploding. And so it still worked out for our buyers that bought in recommendation of that. Now, could this be a recommendation 6 months later that we look at? I think, yeah, it could be because Vladdy is on a team that the Blue Jays, they have been, I cannot tell you how many articles I've seen this offseason or this winter that said Blue Jays are in on this player. Blue Jays are in on this player. They're in on Roki. They're in on freaking everybody. But nobody wants to go north of the border to Toronto. I think that's a negative sign. And I think that the Blue Jays are looking at they have to be looking inward saying, if people don't want to come here, how else are we going to build this program? And it's going to be through prospects and draft selection. Because if we're not a desirable free agent place anymore, then we've got to adjust our strategy. Now, that could see Vladdy go, especially if the Mets don't sign Pete Alonso, which they have said this week that they probably will not be bringing back Pete Alonso, which opens the door for a Vladdy trade. The Red Sox are doing a lot of movement this year and trying to bring in a first baseman as well. I could see that happening. Don't know if they have the capital because they don't want to get rid of some of their studs that they have that are about to be promoted. The Padres do need him as well. They have the assets to make it happen, and their GM loves to trade prospects. So I could see that being the highest probability likelihood. With that being the case, though, his cards will vault in all three of those situations because he's going to go to a team that is a higher market than the Toronto Blue Jays. Sure, he's like the team of the North. Yeah, but nobody up there is buying Vladdy Jr. cards. People down here could potentially buy Vladdy Jr. cards.
I would say it would be risky, possible to profit, but extremely risky to try and buy him now and then flip him. It's a really, really small window. But I would say if you are holding Vladdy Jr. cards, we are putting you on notice for a potential sell alert. You can text sports cards to 1-833-992-5727 to join our email list. That'll give you some great free information. Real quick, before we segue into a new segment that we are calling First to the Market. Tonight is the national championship game between Ohio State and Notre Dame, and Riley Leonard, his 2024 Bowman U Refractor Auto Raw is up 121%. It's up $40. His 2023 First is up $22 or 38%. So Riley Leonard might be the Jared Goff of tonight, where you have to, if you're holding either of those two cards or some Riley Leonard cards, you might need to take a look at what Lefty did with Goff that he talked about earlier on in the episode. Either way, honestly.
Yeah, I was going to say this is the peak.
This is it, because there is no other game. So if you don't have your Riley Leonard cards listed, you probably need to go ahead and list them, because if he wins it, you'll do well. If he doesn't win it, this is going to be probably one of your last chances anyway.
Yeah, because he's not going to be super highly drafted. Shador and Cam are going to take all of that hype in March or April or whatever it is. So you can't be looking towards Riley Leonard's next thing. You need to be getting out now.
Absolutely. All right, here's what we're going to do. We are going to talk about a strategy that we call first to the market. And I am going to lead off and talk about whether or not this is a good idea. We hit on it a little bit last week at the end of the episode, where we went through 4 of our top cards and we had a discussion based on the data around whether or not you should try to go buy singles early on after a new release, get them graded, and go to the market quick, or whether or not you should wait until the market settles and then try to buy in and go after a different selling marker in the future. So I wanted to take a look at Jaden Daniels, because Jaden Daniels Prizm just came out about a month ago. And when I put this episode together, his Prizm Silver PSA 10, there had not been a recorded sale of it. So what I did is I comped it to CJ Stroud's first sale of CJ Stroud's 2023 Prizm Silver PSA 10. You're looking at the second overall pick in back-to-back years. You're looking at the second overall pick last year, who led his team into the playoffs. And he led his team into the playoffs this year, but did not have as outstanding of a season as he did as a rookie. So no better comp for Jaden Daniels than CJ Stroud's 2023 Prizm Silver PSA 10, which first to the market sale was $2,000 on January 27th of 2024. So just about a year ago, almost exactly a year ago. And then about a week later, it sold for $1,500. And then we start to see the dip, the plateau, etc. That card is now a $388 card. So there's that. We'll leave that hanging out there. And then we'll go over to Jaden Daniels. So Jaden Daniels, 2024 Prizm Silver PSA 10. I was going to come on this show, Lefty, and I was going to say, I think it's going to sell for around $2,000. Well, guess what? It sold this past week for $1,880.
Twice.
Now, raw, that's $583 card. PSA 10 sold on January 15th, to be specific, for $1,880. Now, guys, everybody listening, this is a pop 4 right now. As the pop increases for this card, that's going to be one of the major factors for why the price is going to go down. Again, supply and demand. So I'm not telling everybody out there to try and think of this as a money grab. This is actually the opposite. So now let's take a look at the base real quick. So CJ Stroud's base Prizm PSA 10 from 2023. The first sale of that card was same day, this January 27th for $200. Then it sold on the 28th for $325, February 1st for $358. So it was around a $300 card. So Jaden Daniels Prizm base PSA 10. Now the reason why this is super relevant is because Jaden Daniels base raw has sold 567 times in the last 7 days. You guys do the math there on your own. That's a ridiculous amount of times. Averaging $45 a sale for a raw base card. Lefty, yesterday, this is insane. Yesterday, Jaden Daniels' PSA 10 base Prizm sold for $1,000. That's
crazy.
insane. You want to know what CJ Stroud's base Prizm sells for right now, everybody? PSA 10, $42. Think of the difference between $1,000 and $42. So look, a lot of us here at the Sports Card Strategy Show, nooffseason.com, as well as in the audience, we're not set up to monetize the first sale. I think the people who are monetizing the first sale, if I had to guess, I think they're breakers who are pulling these cards.
Yeah.
And I think they are buying them raw from the people that won them in the break because they can see the condition. And the breakers look at enough cards firsthand to know what's likely to gem. So my hypothesis is that the people who can make money on these first to the market things are the breakers that have access to these cards first, that have them in mass, that have the ability to be like, hey, Billy Bob, I pulled you a Jaden Daniels silver. You paid what, $150 to get into this break, PYT Commanders. I don't know if that's the price or not, but this card's selling for $500 right now raw. I'm going to go ahead and make you an offer that you can't refuse of $450 or $425 or however they want to do it. And then they're the ones that are going directly to PSA, probably rush fee, because they're confident in it, and they're the ones doing it. And that's my word of caution right here for this kind of stuff. We've got a lot more content on this. So what we're going to do right now, before we get into Lefty's analysis of a first to the market pick, we're going to bring in Clark Kim from 5 Card Guys to get his analysis of this first to the market strategy, what he thinks of it, what he thinks you all should do. Let's welcome in Clark Kim. Kim, my main man from 5 Card Guys and Cards to the Moon. What's up? How you doing?
Pretty good. We're back for the new year, so I'm glad to be with you again, and looking forward to great things in 2025.
Absolutely. And welcome to the Sports Card Strategy Show, Cards to the Moon listeners. I'm Paul Hickey, and we are talking about 3 different topics on today's show that I'm really excited to ask Clark about. One is, I'm calling it first to the market, but it really has to do specifically with when new releases come out. Because on last week's show, we did an analysis on whether or not it makes sense to try to be first to the market with a PSA graded card, say a big card, maybe not a huge case hit, or maybe not like the biggest hit in a box, but a significant card out of a new release. Does it make sense to be first to the market with a PSA 10 or not? Is that too risky of a strategy? And we did an analysis on last week's show, but we've got some significant releases that have just come out. We've had, obviously, Bowman Draft 2024. We've had Prizm football. So, a lot of Jaden Daniels singles out there, maybe people trying to grade his Prizm silver and be first to the market, that kind of thing. So, Clark, I wanted to ask you, what do you think of this strategy? Do you or your listeners or colleagues at Cards to the Moon and 5 Card Guys have experience with this? What do you think of this strategy, really trying to be first to the market with a PSA 10 of a significant card out of a new release?
Yeah, I'm glad you said significant card, because during the hobby hype, during the 2021-22, pretty much that was the strategy. You grade everything as quickly as you can, and then all PSA 10s have a significant premium, and you just almost couldn't lose flipping. But now you have to choose your cards wisely, and that's why even looking at 2024 Bowman Draft. We were talking in the last week's episode with Jack Caglione and Travis Bazana, who are the top 2 guys, arguably, in the set. And I'm already seeing PSA 10s on the market now. right? So if you kind of look at the cost comparison of what a raw is, that's still selling on eBay because it is a fairly new release still. You're almost looking at double the profits for PSA 10s. So just quick couple numbers. Travis Bazzana, his base rookie auto from the 2024 Bowman draft set, PSA 10 is going for about $400, and his raw card is going for about $180. So that's the premium you're looking at. And Jack Caglione is the same thing. PSA 10 going for $400, and his non-graded raw cards are going for $200. So you're saying, so it does work. And I think what's good about 2024 Bowman draft to get significant cards graded now is that even if you get it back and you're listing it for $400, $450 right now, there is a potential that it'll go up even higher when we get closer to the MLB season, because there's always that initial hype of top prospects, top rookies. And I think that's probably, or more usually, the best time to sell your cards when people are really excited about these top prospects. So right now for 24 Bowman draft, if you ripped and you got one of these top rookies, I think it's just good advice to get it graded, and especially if you think it'll PSA 10.
Yeah, I think that's a great point that you make about this Bowman draft release every year. It's an interesting timing that it comes out in December. So you not only have like the hype of the new release trying to get first to the market with a PSA 10, but then you don't even really need to be first to the market if you get it graded by March. By the end of March, you can be like basically regular speed to the market and still make some money maybe on the baseball hype. So I like that. And I actually have experienced that personally with Wyatt Langford last year, just basically not doing anything super special, buying his base auto, first auto, and getting it graded. And I think I got maybe even a 9 on one of them and still did okay on a 9 just because it was a decent timing. And of course he made the club out of spring training, so that probably helped. And then you've got other releases, of course, that may not be the best timing on the calendar. Like I would say Prizm Football is an interesting new release because now we have a situation where really, other than a few people left over in the playoffs, everyone's season is over. So you've got rookies like Bo Nix and Drake May and JJ McCarthy who didn't even play. You've got obviously Jaden Daniels is the big one. He's going to be the one that everybody's after. Caleb Williams. One thing that you mentioned related to the raw to PSA 10 prices with 2024 Bowman draft, I noticed that if you go to some bigger cards, now this isn't out of Prizm, but out of Donruss, Caleb Williams' downtown actually goes for slightly more in a PSA 9 than it does raw. So you've got the upside on that particular card. If you can get it for around $800 US raw, you've got the upside of close to $1,700 in a PSA 10, but it still goes for like just over $800 in a PSA 9. So you're going to lose a little bit, but in some cases, if it's a big enough card, it might be worth grading it, even if it does get a 9, because you've got the upside of a 10, and you really don't lose your shorts if you get a 9. I mean, it keeps you in the game if you can get a 9 and sell it right away. So the first to the market strategy from buying singles out of a new release, I think is interesting. Obviously, I think to your point with the good old days of 2020 or maybe even early 2021, you had the ability to rip wax and kind of get everything graded. So Lefty, I want to bring you in on the Bowman draft 2024 that Clark spoke about there. And I think he brought up an interesting point, in the timing of that release can actually open up a strategy where you can, and I said you can be regular speed to the market, but I think we're all looking for an ideal mix of high desirability from a release and still being able to flip raw to grade right away from that newer release. Like, as much as we sort of hammer home the point of when there's a new release, you should go back and buy previous years of that release. That's super safe and it's fun to make money, but it can also be boring when there's a new release that comes out. So I think Bowman Draft every year gives us maybe the opportunity to participate in a newer release, do it in a wise way, and still make money. What are your thoughts on that strategy? And just kind of teeing you up here for anyone that you want to talk about out of this release where you see opportunities to buy raw and grade.
Yeah, I think last year you brought this up with a lot of data. You said like, okay, we're looking at these top 5 guys out of this set. Like, could we potentially do that with small runway players? And I think that is the key here on the Bowman Draft December to March flip run. It's a perfectly executed time that you can buy a card potentially in the first release couple of weeks of one of the most desirable sets out there, the Bowman Draft, and then potentially still get money for it in 3 months and 4 months. I think the runway is so key here. And I loved what he had to say, but I thought that was left out because you have to get players. You mentioned Wyatt Langford. We specifically flag planted on him last year because of the fact that they almost brought him up to the majors in their 2023 World Series run. They almost brought him up because of how big he would have been to the club then. So we knew this guy's probably going to make the club in spring training, and there was a lot of hype around that. So there was like a 3-month runway to get his cards and then to sell them. That's a perfect opportunity for us. And so if I'm looking at this 2024 Bowman set, and I like Jack Caglione, like who he talked about. I like Montgomery and some other guys. He went to the Boston Red Sox in the draft and has already been traded to the White Sox. But the guy that I think is the guy that I would flag plant if I'm going to take a card out of this set is the guy that you guys talked about, Travis Bazzana. He is already on the top 10 potential list for second baseman. Like he's going to be a top 10 player projected at his position when he gets up to the majors. And his team needs him to do that. His team needs him to come up and play second base in his program. So the Guardians are going to be moving him fast, and Bazzana has a bona fide and I've said an over majority percentage chance of him going to the majors right out of camp this year. So if we look at his market movers chart, his raw prices actually weren't through the roof in December. And so, normally we see this chart work where it's like extremely high and then it's like dropped off. His chart actually looks pretty healthy in my opinion. So you can get into his cards at a 189 clip right now for a raw auto, and his PSA 10 is selling for what he said, like around $400. And I think it's interesting to see that on December 8th, which is, it's 8 days before the $400 sale, there was a $1,000 sale, but that's not picking up on market movers, but that's from Kern's Cards, which interestingly enough is the guy that has all the one-of-ones that we met at the National. So Kern's Cards is the guy that sold the $1,000 version of this card. But I would say like the $400 PSA 10 is really achievable. There's even some PSA 9s that are going for more money than that. So it's this is a card that I would really, really like to get into over the next couple of weeks and get this first to the market sold. I think this could be a really good mover. Even if you bought them raw now, I think they're going to sell for over 15% to 20% more in a couple months.
So there's no blanket statement. I mean, this is a great thing to look at. There is a first to the market strategy if you look at the right release for the right sport at the right time, and then you get the right card for the right player out of that release at the right time. And I think we've nailed that. 2024 Bowman Draft is one of the potential releases where you can use this first to the market strategy if you go for the right player. So good work, Lefty. You pulled this auction up that I thought was intriguing. So there's currently, as we're broadcasting, there's 5 hours left on this auction. So if you're listening on the podcast apps, you're probably not going to have an opportunity at this one. But basically, there's who knows how many of these cards, like 2024 Bowman first prospect auto, Bowman Chrome first prospect auto of Bazana, the base auto. So I think I'm with you and Clark on that 100%. If I were buying more players than just my 5, that's probably a card I'd be bidding on right now, just to give everybody an idea of how much I believe in what Lefty is saying here, along with Clark. So good work. We're going to segue into the next segment called Addicted to Crack. No surefire bet, because there's risk involved in the strategy that I'm about to bring up. And in the segment that we call Addicted to Crack on the Sports Card Strategy Show,
I like that.
we talk about our top crack and submit to PSA options. So for those of you out there, for Cards to the Moon listeners or Sports Card Strategy listeners, maybe new listeners out there, there is a significant pricing difference in gem mint cards that are not graded by PSA and gem mint cards that are graded by PSA. Yeah. There's a pricing difference on the secondary market, but not necessarily always a quality difference. Mm-hmm. And then if you were to take it a step further, I would say the further back you go into like vintage cards, you don't even need to be looking at gem mint. You can be looking at sometimes a BGS 6 and a PSA 6, or a BGS 6.5, a PSA 6.5, and a PSA 7. Of course, PSA doesn't have a 9.5 grade, but you do even have grading companies like SGC and CGC who have a 9.5 mint plus, they call it. So you could even try to find cards sometimes that are a 9.5 mint plus from a grading company and try to cross those over to PSA 10. Now, don't try to cross them over, but definitely crack them, make them raw again, and then you can submit them in a bulk submission to PSA. So, Clark, I want to talk to you about this because we haven't talked about this yet, and we've talked several times. We've created quite a bit of content together, and crack and submit. Is this something that you do? Is it something that you've had success with, or is something you're leery of? Break it down for us here.
Yeah, I know friends that have done it quite a bit and with great success. But like you were saying, it's no guarantee. You'll definitely lose on some of it, in terms of cracking and resubmitting, because it could come back a lower grade. And I personally don't have a lot of experience with it, but I do have one recent experience with it, and I could share that with you and my thought process in it. And that was my 2009 Bowman Chrome rookie auto of Mike Trout. So it was a big card, and I got it. It was Beckett graded BGS 9 with the 10 auto. Okay, and I just bought on eBay. I didn't grade that myself, and it was one of those cards that I've always wanted ever since I got back into the hobby. And then Mike Trout unfortunately got injured again, and then his card started to plummet, and so did all of his even more higher end cards as well. And I was thinking maybe I can sell this and then reinvest it into a refractor number to 500 with whatever I can get out of it. It's because everything's kind of dropping down. But what I liked about my BGS 910 auto card was the subgrades. So if you're going to crack from BGS to PSA, Beckett graded cards have subgrades, and the subgrades will give you maybe a better indication of whether it could get a better grade. And what I mean by a better grade is not necessarily a PSA 10. That's kind of your best case scenario. But even a PSA 9, kind of like what you're saying, a BGS 9 to a PSA 9, you'll see a healthy bump in value if you could get that. And I was just looking over the subgrades of my BGS 9, and it was 9.5 on the centering and the corners. The edges were a 10, so I got 110. And why it was a BGS 9 was because the surface had an 8.5. And the surface could be, the reason for an 8.5 for a surface could be because there's a dimple or there's a slight scratch, and you kind of have to examine it yourself. And I didn't see any significant dimples, which are harder to get a better grade in if that was the case. But if there was if there was a slight scratch, then maybe you can wipe it down, and you never know. So that's kind of the risk I took. And long story short, it came back at PSA 9. So I was pretty glad with that. That's at least a $1,000 bump in value.
Yes, nice,
right?
good work.
So there you go. And I ended up selling it recently for that little extra bump in value. And now I'm looking for a nice Mike Trout refractor card I can reinvest in.
What a great success story. That's perfect, man. Thank you for sharing. And you dropped a lot of great knowledge in there, too, a lot of value for the listeners in terms of looking at the BGS subgrades. I mean, a quick story or two from me on this. When I first started cracking and submitting to PSA, the mistakes, I made two key mistakes. One of them was I didn't really look at the card that was in the slab that I was buying as much as I needed to. Instead, I just looked at the grade. And so the point that you make about the BGS having subgrades, I was cracking a lot of SGC at first. And so I wasn't able to look at the subgrades. And I was looking at, oh, this is an SGC 10. And I was doing my research around the potential bump from like an SGC 10 to a PSA 10. And I thought that was pretty safe. Okay, if it gemmed at SGC, it has a good chance of gemming at PSA. Unfortunately, a lot went wrong because again, I made two mistakes. One was I wasn't really examining the card that was in the slab. I wasn't looking at it like a grader would potentially look at it. I was just because obviously everybody we're cracking it out and submitting it raw. So nobody knows the person grading it doesn't know that it got a grade earlier. They're regrading it. And so I wasn't doing that very, very important part. And Clark talking about the subgrades really is a good point because if you are looking to crack and submit, I have had more success the more that I've done this with BGS because of the subgrades, because they at least give you some sort of indicator of why a card has gotten a certain grade. And so then when you examine that card, examine the subgrades, you can make a more informed decision as to what you think it might grade at PSA. Yeah. And PSA selling for more on the secondary market is why we keep saying we're submitting it to PSA in this case. The other big mistake I made was I wasn't looking at what the card would sell for if it didn't get the desired grade.
Right.
And so I would say in honestly 95% of cases, the grade or half grade down at PSA from what you're trying to achieve will slaughter you. We're not just talking break even. We're talking it could be $400, $500, $600 of a loss versus $200 to $1,000 of a win, right? Clark laid out a good scenario where he bumped up about 1K. Well, it's easy to look at the data and go, oh, well, I could bump up 1K if I get the desired grade here, or potentially even the likely grade. But what I would encourage everybody out there to do is do your research around what would you be out? What would you be looking at financially if you get 1 or 2 grades lower? Because I can tell you from experience, I've cracked and submitted for myself only, probably a couple hundred cards to PSA. And so and I would say the first half of those, I suffered pretty massive losses from the 2 mistakes that I just walked you guys through, and I've gotten better at it during the last half of the cards, and not only getting better with examining the cards, but getting better with just buying the right cards and not putting myself in a situation where there's a lot of upside, but now I'm susceptible to a huge loss if it doesn't get the grade I want. Now. One other interesting story real quick, I'll try to be brief on this, is I did buy a Michael Jordan BGS 9, a 1987 Fleer this past year. And I bought it for around $900 US. And if that crosses over to a PSA 9, there's a significant bump there. And when I was looking at the card, it had... I think 110 subgrade 2 9 subgrades and an 8 subgrade, and the 8 or 2 9. I think there was at least basically what it spec'd out as was it spec'd out as a potential to even get a PSA 10, because I believe there was a 9.5 subgrade as well, a 9 and maybe an 8. So I might be a little bit off on that. It definitely was a BGS 9, but there was a subgrade of an 8, and the subgrade of an 8 was on the surface. I couldn't tell anything about the surface. Yeah. I took it to a trusted resource who does this a lot in the hobby and actually has a business that everybody would probably know. I'm not going to throw out who it is, and he's a great guy, but he helped me with looking at it and going, yeah, Paul, there is nothing wrong with the surface here. This could cross over to a PSA 10, which would then have been like a 10x bump from the significant bump that I was hoping to get just to get to a PSA 9. Well, long story short, even though there was nothing wrong with the card, it came back, and it came back as a PSA 8 first when I went through this hobbyist who does this for a living. Yeah. And so that is a significant bump down, right? And so then the person told me, look, it got an 8, but I'm going to resubmit it again because I really think this is a 9. So he cracked it out, resubmitted it to PSA. We were hoping for a 9. It came back as an 8 again. So now what do? Well, now thanks to this gentleman, he said, look, let's resubmit it to BGS in a Beckett raw card review, which for those of you who are unfamiliar, if you get whatever Beckett gives you in a raw card review, they honor that grade in a slab. So he submitted it to Beckett in a raw card review. It got a BGS 9 again, the exact same grade. Right. And he figured out that there was a surface issue, but it was a printing defect. So it wasn't anything that we could really see on the card, but it was a printing defect. Again, this is from 1987. Right. So he had to go back and do a lot of research. Long story short, gets a BGS 9. I end up selling it for about $100 profit after all of that. Even counting the resubmitting fees and everything like that. So, well, like that, all that is to say that if you do your research the right way around what your potential upside would be, and you buy the card, this is the other thing, Clark. Buy the card for the comps of that card. Don't buy the card for what you would hope. Like, don't factor in like some kind of profit margin and go, well, if I bump up a grade, I'm okay going and paying a little bit more for it. Yeah. Because I originally got a good deal on the BGS 9, I was able to still profit from it even after resubmitting it, technically cracking it 3 times and submitting it 3 times, the last one back to BGS. So this is something that people can make a lot of money on. We're going to talk on the Sports Card Strategy Show more about cards like Barry Sanders 1989 Score, Joe Montana 1981 Topps, Wayne Gretzky 1979 O-Peachy, Tony Gwynn 1983 Topps, Ricky Henderson 1980 Topps, and again the Michael Jordan 1987 Fleer 59. So, all right, so let's talk about those cards real quick, Lefty. So Barry Sanders 1989 Score in BGS 9.5 sells for $396, average in the last 365 days, $408. You would get a bump of potentially $1,500, up to $1,500. So that'd be like a $1,200 probably maximum bump. The average in the PSA 10 in the last 365 days, though, is $1,300. So I would say if you were able to find a BGS 9.5 that looks like it could cross over to a PSA 10, and crossover is actually the wrong terminology, to crack and submit. You would crack and submit. You would get a bump of like $1,000. Now the risk there though is if you get a 9, that's a $123 card. If you get an 8.5, which exists, that's an $80 card. Now on the Joe Montana 1981 Topps, I like to look at not just PSA 10s, but like a BGS 8.5 of a Joe Montana 1981 Topps goes for $384. A PSA 8.5 goes for $696. So again, BGS 8.5 goes for 384, or the average in the last 365 days, 414. A PSA 8.5, which in theory would be the same grade, average 365 days, 696. Now, if you were fortunate enough to get a PSA 9, that is a massive bump up to almost a $1,900 card. Now, of course, if you get the PSA 7, which is also potentially likely, that's a $186 card. So you need to really look at the card and determine, is a potential $200 loss worth a $300 gain or even a $1,500 gain? For me, that's why I pulled out the Joe Montana. That could be worth it. One that I know Lefty likes, Wayne Gretzky 1979 OPC, number 18. Now, this is interesting because we're looking at Beckett vintage grading, which is different than it's the same company, but a different like grading scale and grading staff and everything like that. BVG 6.5. This is around a $1,500 card. In a PSA 6.5, it's double that. $3,000 card. Now, the risk on the downside of the PSA 6, actually, there's upside in the PSA 6. 2750 in the PSA 6. Who knows what a BVG 6.5 is going to grade for, though? So I think you'd need to be conservative and go down to like a PSA 4.5, but that's a $1,500 card. Now, the tricky part is this is going to be hard to find. Like this is going to be one that's super hard to find. How do you go find a BVG 6.5? Well, the last sale was right before Christmas, so it's possible, but that was about a month ago. So I think you're looking at like searching for at least a whole month before that one becomes available. I've got 3 more real quick. Tony Gwynn, 1983 tops in BGS 9.5. It's a $670 card. Now, trying to crack and submit to a PSA 10, there's big time upside there. It becomes almost a $3,600 card. But in a PSA 9, this is what I was talking about with Clark. That is the massive mistake I made several times. In a PSA 9, it's a $180 card. So proceed with caution there. Now, if you're looking for something maybe a little bit less risky, Ricky Henderson 1980 tops base in an SGC 6.5 is a $70 card. If you wanted to try to get it in a PSA 6.5, all of a sudden it's a $110 card. So maybe that's a good place to start. In a PSA 7, it's a $150 card. So I would recommend, if you're new to this, spend less money. Just try to do a similar thing. Last one, Michael Jordan 1987 Fleer base 59. Actually, like, I don't love the actual card itself, but this is one of my favorite cards to make plays on because there's so many you can make. In BGS 8, this is a $420 card. In a PSA 8, well, it's the same. So there you go. Not a good play there. Lefty, over to you.
Yeah, so I loved this discussion here between you and Clark, and it got me thinking, especially when we talk about that Mike Trout card. One of my favorite cards to own and to flip is the 2011 Bowman Mike Trout. So it's just a simple black border card with him hitting on it, and it's not that expensive. It's under $100 right now raw. And so I just went out and I'm like, okay, I know there's people that are down on Mike Trout. I wonder if I could go find a crack to resubmit play. And I found one. I found one that's a PSA 7 right now for $25, and the raw card is selling for $80. So the $25
graded
PSA
to
7
raw.
Graded to raw is I'm bidding on that currently. I already am bidding. And then I found another one that it's a BGS 8 or BGS 9 that has several 9.5 subgrades that is going for about $70, and a PSA 10 of this card goes for around $450. So I love the card. I love the thing. I think it's really important if you're going to do this strategy, you have to be laser focused on a certain few cards, because it's like there are so many BGS 8.5s out there of every card. You have to have specific and tailorable reasons of why you're buying said card for said athlete. It has to be a well-desired card. You can't just go out there and buy, a BGS 8.5 of freaking Aaron Rodgers and it's going to sell for more when you move it over to a PSA 9. That's not the case. But a first Bowman of Mike Trout, or, like the 87 Jordan, or for instance, like there's certain cards you can do this with. And I would say there's probably about, I don't know, maybe 250 that you could probably do this with. If I'm making a general guess at how many cards you could really laser focus into this on. So you've got to pick which one of these are you going to be regularly searching PSA for. For me, it's the 2011 Mike Trout and the 79 Opeachy. I freaking love that card, and I have not pulled the trigger on it. And I've been hunting for a while. I mean, me and you have been looking at it for every national that we've been to at this point. So
well, you can make some money if you could find. I'm going to start helping you try to find it in a BVG. But you made a great point. So we've thrown out a lot of caution signals to all of you in the audience. Like be very, very cautious when doing this. And Lefty added another great one, which is make sure the card is desirable. Make sure that there is enough sales data of the desired grade of the card that you're going after before you buy it. Make sure it sells multiple times in a month. I think Lefty nailed that one. So be careful around crack, boys and girls, because it can be very addictive. There will be more addicted to crack coming up in future Sports Card Strategy Show episodes, because it is a great strategy. You just got to do it the right way. All right. We got two more segments on today's show. One real quick is release calendar strategies. So we're going to bring in, for the final time in this episode, our friend Clark Kim from 5 Card Guys and Cards to the Moon podcast to discuss first some release calendar strategies. Then Lefty and I are going to bring it home. Release calendar strategies. This is something that we talk a lot about, and you and I have talked about this before. But one of our main strategies is that when a new release comes out and the entire hobby starts pouring their money into that wax, breaks, and singles from that new release, we like to typically go back a year or two and buy the top singles with upside from that same release, but from previous years.
Yeah.
So is this something that you and your colleagues over at 5 Card Guys and Cards to the Moon have done? And is it something that you have had success with? Talk about maybe this strategy and maybe there's, maybe there's success stories, but maybe there's also risks to this strategy that you wanted to talk about.
Yeah, no, I personally love this strategy because I believe we even talked about it in a previous episode, but the stars of even yesteryear are long forgotten when all these new prospects and top rookies come up and they get the shine and everyone wants their cards. But I love looking back a year and there's usually good deals to be had. So even this past year, we got 2025 Top Series 1 coming out next week for baseball, and you see who the top rookies are, and then you almost forget, like, what was in 2024? Like, who was top? Like, you have to almost remind yourself and go back to it, and or even 2023, like even a couple years out. Guys like, I like targeting guys like Corbin Carroll and Gunnar Henderson now. The guys that had all the attention last year, and in their second year, usually because they're Rookie of the Year candidates or Rookie of the Year winners, the second year is always an adjustment period for these guys. Other than Gunnar Henderson, who seems to really do well in his second season, but still, his attention is not as much as it was when he first came out. And so I like looking at those card prices of different cards, whether it's Topps Heritage Red Ink autos for these guys that are numbered, or of course the first Bowman Chrome autograph cards as well. And then, looking further back, like one guy I'm really excited about in targeting is Julio Rodriguez. So he's 2-3 years back, and he was a cover boy for pretty much all of the new baseball card releases a couple years ago, and everyone thinks he had a down year. We talked about this on Cards to the Moon, but if you look at his stats, he just started slow. He reminds us of another guy you might know. His name's Juan Soto. Just starts off slow, but at the end of the season, he just ramps up. And his stats, if you compare it from year to year, wasn't that significantly off. But there's this, stigma that he's not the superstar that everyone thought he would be. But I think he'll have an even greater rebound season this year as he adjusts even more. And he's still a mid-20s, really young guy, and stays healthy. So J-Rod is one of those guys I love to target this year. And, one guy that I was targeting last year because he had a a great season, but then because of other rookies coming up, he was maybe a little bit forgotten, was a guy named Bobby Witt Jr. And we know what happened with Bobby Witt this past year. I didn't take my own advice. I should have bought in last year. If I did, I would have been profiting hand over fist right now with Bobby Witt cards. But because right now it's just a little too late if you want to profit on him now. You got to hold him to probably mid to long term at this point, because of his card prices are so inflated. But guys like that where they're a year or two out, and maybe the shine's off a little bit on those guys. But you look at their numbers, they performed well during the rookie year, and they still have that potential to take that next step. You can only find those guys in previous year sets, really, and that's where I love to take advantage of. So to your point, I love that strategy.
We're totally aligned, and for most of the hobby, that's hyperbole, but I feel like most of the hobby
right.
doesn't look at this strategy. I feel like most of the hobby gets so caught up in the new release and really has tunnel vision and FOMO on I've got to go get this adrenaline rush. And I guess on one hand, it can be considered a little boring to go after some of these other names, but really, is making money and making profit boring? I would say no. And we've had a lot of people at nooffseason.com, I would say at least half of our premium members say, I found you guys after wasting so much money on breaks, trying to buy into breaks and buying and ripping wax. And I'm so glad I found you, because while that's exciting, I'm so sick of wasting all that money. Yeah. And so a lot of times we'll come up with strategies for people to try to sort of break their quote unquote addiction to that. Right. And so everything that you just said is so perfect for people to go back and hit the rewind button on their podcast app and listen to what Clark said over and over again, because he's talking about young, exciting major leaguers that have already proven that they are legitimate major leaguers. Even more than that, they're the young stars of the game. So we get so caught up in these new prospects that get released every year. And the strategy that Clark just outlined in terms of going back, I love it. I love it. Your analysis of not only the players to go look at, but also you threw in some cards that make a lot of sense to go buy in terms of being able to buy them low, and the cards have some upside built in. Great comparison to Juan Soto in terms of just kind of ramping up slow throughout the season. In terms of J-Rod, I love everything that you just said, and I'm excited for people to go make some of those baseball plays as well. Mm-hmm. I think there's a ton of basketball and football plays that we could be talking about. I think part of the problem with the basketball and football plays is that there's a little bit of fatigue around some of these guys because we're at the end of the football season, right, and we're kind of right in the middle of the NBA season. But we'll talk more about that in upcoming content on the Sports Card Strategy Show. But Clark, thanks again for creating content with me, man. I really appreciate it. Is there anything you wanna talk about before we let each other go?
No, I would love to carry the conversation on about cracking and ripping, because there's so much more we can touch upon that if I started another conversation, it would be another half hour. So I'm just saying that out loud, so we'll remember for the next time we meet.
Yeah. Thanks again to Clark Kim from Cards to the Moon for being on the show today. We're going to continue to create more content with him. George Taylor in the live chat wants to give a shout out to the premium membership at nooffseason.com. Says, I have been a member for a few months and this has been a game changer for me. It has gotten me away from breaks and refocused on raw to grade, smart
Come on, George.
plays. Terry Anderson says, George Taylor, me too. Lefty, we want you making so many monies. Right? I mean,
so many monies, man.
Well said by me.
I did love that.
Yeah, well said by me there. Well, guys and girls, people, it's probably what I should say. Human beings that are consuming this content right now. It is that time of the month. And no, I don't mean that time of the month, but I mean the time of the month where we give Lefty the floor and we say, Lefty, we get to talk about whatever you want to talk about. This is the debut of Out of Left Field. Let's go, baby. What are we talking about, Lefty?
All right, we're gonna talk. No, I'm not going too crazy this time, and I know there will be some in the future where you will just laugh as soon as I give it to you. But I have seen a rise in TCG cards and investments in those cards over the last couple of months. There's been a rise in some of the media that's come from PSA. There's been a rise in my news feed when I scroll through Twitter. I mean, most of my algorithms are around sports card related content. And so when I see more TCG content, I have to ask, is this potentially taking away from over the long term or adding to sports
What's up?
cards?
You guys are not.
Go ahead and play the. Go ahead and play the
you
video.
off. No, that was unintentional.
Well, I was gonna say this video is another sort of advertisement of what I'm talking about, and I just want to play this video, Paul. Watch it, and then give me your first reaction afterwards.
Okay.
And go. What's up? You guys are not. Oh, don't run. It says no running. Scan your memberships. Man, they opened it up to 2 lines. Oh, dang, don't run. Don't run. Look at that. It's right here. It's right here in the front. Oh, hurry up. Get your 10. It's 5 per customer. Oh, five per customer? Oh, it's only 5 per customer. Got it. There, it's gone. That's it. That was it. It's over.
Savages, all of you.
Dang. So for those of you listening, we'll give this some context. Go ahead, Lefty.
It's an entire palette of Pokemon cards that is Costco available. They had to wait in line for. They let them in, they make them walk, they go to it, and you get 5 packs you get 5 little bundles per person. And the entire palette is gone within 20 seconds of putting it out. What does that remind you of?
Well, it reminds me of 2020, I guess 2020 Prizm, and I think it happened in 2021 at Target.
Exactly.
Prizm football shut down everything. Yeah.
I mean, we haven't seen things like this since the COVID era of cards. And this is something that's happening now and regularly. I'm seeing this commonly on my news feed now, where people are rushing the shelves for TCG cards. Now, I don't know if you want to give an explanation of what all that entails, but I just wanted to know, out of these 5 minutes, Paul, how do you think that affects what we do in the sports card arena? Because I have a take, but I'm curious about what you would think.
This is a brilliant question. Great first out of left field segment from you, by the way. So I'll give a shout out to a guy named Mike LaCusta real quick. He's the golf card collector. So he has a podcast as well called Fondling Cardboard. And we've created content together in the past. And he's very good at what he does. He does different content than us, but he's very good at what he does. His content's focused more around the collector. And so I'm not really into that kind of content personally, but but he and I were creating content together one time, and he was challenging me a lot on flipping. And we actually, it took us maybe 3 or 4 different recordings where we were talking about different things to kind of get down to the bottom of why I could tell he hated what we do. Because I would ask him, I would say, you do what we do as a collector. Like, collectors flip. So why do you keep questioning me on flipping? And we finally uncovered it. And what he realized is what he defines as flipping is what is in the video that you just showed. Now, the video that you just showed, it's interesting. The title of the video doesn't use the word flippers. It uses the word scalpers. It uses the word scalpers. So what I think, again, Mike and I uncovered is that when we say we want to help you make money flipping sports cards, or when we say incorrectly in the English language, we want you to make so many monies flipping sports cards. What we mean is we want you to strategically buy singles of the right card for the right player at the right time. We don't want you doing what these people are doing in Costco. We don't want you rushing the shelves of Costco, rushing the shelves of Target, of Walmart. I don't really condone that kind of behavior. I'll let Lefty speak for himself here in a second, but I don't love it. I don't like it. I don't really want any part of it. I don't think it's a sustainable thing. I'm not going to create content around it. I think you have to be lucky to get to that display at any given retail store. And I'm not into getting lucky. I'm into building sustainable strategies that anybody can do anywhere from any location in the world at any time in the world. And in order to make money that scalping way, you have to be fortunate enough to be in a city at a location at a time and be one of 5 people that were able to buy 5 out of the 25 boxes, because there's limit 5 per customer. So like 5 people can benefit on what just happened at that particular Costco. I want the masses to be able to benefit. So to sum it up, I would say it gives flipping a bad name, because to the point about Mike LaCusta, people like him, unfortunately, associate flipping with crap like that. And I don't think that's what flipping's about.
Yeah, I'm right there with you on not condoning this as a strategy. I don't even think this is a strategy. This is gambling. You're showing up to these stores praying that no one has found the box on the shelf yet. And I've been there previously, and I don't want to go back to that. I want to do a surefire investment. The broader part that I'm trying to argue here is when the TCG market is going up in popularity, when you see media that is pumped towards this, when you see card sales that are going up towards this, I think this is further going to benefit the sports card collector. There's a lot of TCG cards that are coming out now that are actually not only in a trading card game, but are actually in a collecting / investing. Previously, we've only seen like a couple of Pokemon cards that were investable because of the nostalgia of it. But now there's things like One Piece. There's different animes that are putting out cards. There's Magic the Gathering. There's Lorcana from Disney. There's a lot of other different companies that are getting in the trading card game, which I think will further vault the access, availability, viewership, and likelihood of people buying sports cards, which will in turn get more eyeballs on what we are doing, thus helping the overall viewership of the hobby and of our investments to go up, which I think in the long run, trickle is good for the hobby, our hobby. And that's generally what I was trying to say here.
Great analysis there. I think it's a great segment. Out of left field, our very own Lefty McKee. Well done. If you want more Lefty McKee and you want more of myself and Interner, go to nooffseason.com, get a free 30-day trial, and it gives you a second podcast called the Premium Pod every week. It's on Fridays, and you get to ask an unlimited amount of questions, and we do the research and analysis to help you build a sports card investment portfolio that increases in value. Lefty, I'm about to hit him with the outro. Anything else you want to add for today?
Gotta love it, man. I'm excited for what we're going into.
Let's get it. Thanks so much for being here with us on the Sports Card Strategy Show. If you enjoyed the content on today's show, there's plenty more waiting for you at nooffseason.com. Just go to nooffseason.com right now and get a free 30-day trial. You get our formula-based sports card rankings, sports card school, inventory tracker, the ability to grade with us, and the premium podcast where we answer an unlimited amount of your questions. Check it out right now at nooffseason.com. For everyone at nooffseason.com, I'm Paul Hickey. Thanks again for being here with us on the Sports Card Strategy Show. We'll see you again soon. Have a great day.